Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video. And strange as it sounds, this is a Cutter Top 10 that is not sports related. You'll be thinking, what the hell are you doing, Cutter? Well, it is a top 10 because a famous theft that happened yesterday. As I am taping this on January 31st, and this will come out on January 31st, 2026, the entertainment world lost a great actress by the name of Catherine O'Hara. You remember her? Well, she was on SCTV. Of course, that's what the first thing Canadians remember her as, like pre 2000s. She was also in the Christopher Guest mockumentaries, the mock documentaries like A Mighty Wind and Best in Show alongside Eugene Levy. She was in Nightmare Before Christmas. She did Schitt's Creek for 6 years, and of course, most iconic role, Kevin. That's right. She was Kevin's mom on Home Alone 1 and 2. So, yep, Kevin O'Hara, massive and all that. The legend that she is. She acted with her fellow SCTV alums in many things like John Candy, Eugene Levy, and even Joe Flaherty. But we're going to take a look at the top 10 Canadian comedies of all time. So these are great comedies and all that. I can't really rank them because there are, you know, a little bit of bias and all that because I've seen how many of these have I seen? I've seen 7 of these 10. So I can't really rank them. So I'm going to give you 10 comedy series of all time and Canadian comedy shows. All right. Comedy show number 1 is Air Farce, Royal Canadian Air Farce. It started off as a radio broadcast in 1973 with 5 key members. If I can remember this off the top of my head, Roger Abbott, Don Ferguson, Lou Goy, John Morgan, and Dave Broadfoot. I think I got them all right. They did have people sparsed in, but yeah, it was more of a radio show for like 7 years. And then CBC in 1980 decided to put some summer specials on with the Air Force. There were some sketches that they acted, but a few they actually read from scripts, like a radio thing. But it was on TV. They did some specials for years on, and in 1993 they decided to finally put them to CBC TV, and Air Force was born. This cultural thing for 20 years. It ended in 2013. It was great. It had those core 4 people. Well, Dave Broadfoot did not really appear in the TV series. He was a semi-regular. But in later years, they would put people like Craig Luson, Alan Park, Jessica Holmes, and a few other people. But the fact is, Air Force had the core 4. You had Luba Goy doing the Queen and um, Wendy Mesley from CBC Marketplace. You had John Morgan doing Mike from Canmore and a few other characters. Oh, yeah, Jock McBile, Get Stuffed. You had Roger Ferguson doing Sean Cratchian. He was the guy who did Cratchian as a character and a few other things too. And Don Ferguson did Pierre Elliott Trudeau and a few other characters. So yeah, Air Force was great. Comedy number 2, Little Mosque on the Prairie. It was, Little House on the Prairie was popular, but no, Little Mosque on the Prairie. It actually broke ground on CBC because it had Muslim characters in rural Saskatchewan. It actually worked out quite well. I mean, Saskatchewan is known for their Western culture and all that, but Muslim life in Saskatchewan, it was just pure amazement. And this is not the last time Saskatchewan will be mentioned on a comedy show. But anyway, yeah, Little Mosque on the Prairie was pretty good. I didn't really watch it as growing up. Like I know it was like in the late 2000s, early 2010s, but I didn't really watch it. Number 3 is The Red Green Show. This was big. Everyone remembers it was on CBC for the longest time, but it wasn't always on CBC. It actually shuttled TV stations and networks. The first few seasons were in CHCH's headquarters in Hamilton, where Steve Smith, the guy who played Red Green, was based out of. And then it moved to CFPL for Channel 10, you know, they call BBS and all that. But then after a few seasons there, it moved to CBC to become the Red Green Show. Yeah, I think Global had that for a while. Yeah, and Global had it for a while. But then CBC got it with the Red Green Show. It was amazing. Sketch and handyman comedy, Red Green doing all the stuff with handyman with duct tape and all that, duct tape corner and all that. Great characters like Dalton Humphreys, the curio store guy, Winston Rothschild from the sewage thing, Ed Fred, an animal control officer who was afraid of animals. Um, what is that guy's name? Graham Greene was even on the show. He recently passed away. He was Edward Montrose, the dynamite expert, and you had Mike, the career criminal, played by Wayne Robson. You had Gordon Pinson in it as a Hap Shaughnessy, the Habdrill Liar, and Peter Callahan as Ranger Gord, and even Patrick McKenna as Harold, who would be Red's sidekick and all that for many years, and then he left for a few years and then came back. But yeah, the Red Green Show was amazing. If the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. And then they did the Possum Lodge stuff. It was amazing. It was pretty nice and all that. And of course, Adventures with Bill as well. Number 4 is This Tower Has 22 Minutes. This launched in 1993, the same year as Air Force did on CBC. Now, many of the people from This Tower Has 22 Minutes actually were in a sketch comedy show from Nova Scotia called Codco, because they were from Nova Scotia and all that, from Atlantic Canada, which you don't really see in Central Canada. You had Kathy Jones, Rick Mercer, Greg Toomey, Mary Walsh, and in later years, Colin Mockery, Sean Magender. There were a few other people too. This show went on for till what, 2023 or something like that. I don't think it's on regularly now. Of course, Rick Mercer spun everything off into the Rick Mercer Report, talking to Americans. It had like Mark Delahunty, Mary Walsh's character, Mark Delahunty, in this Cena warrior princess like outfit and talking to like politicians and all that. And it was kind of funny that they sparsed real life people with the news. It's like Air Force with the chicken cannon and all that, and special guest roles by people. But yeah, the Cyrus 22 Minutes was pretty impressive because it mocked, Canadian politics and current events. It even was big because in 2000, there was an online petition which 22 Minutes did mockingly to change Stockwell Day, who was the leader of one of Canada's parties, political parties, not liberal or conservative, like the Reform Party or whatever, to change it from Stockwell to Doris Day, and it actually got 300,000 signatures. Stockwell Day actually was okay with the joke and all that, which was great. But yeah, 22 Minutes was just pure amazement and all that. Next up, number 5 is Kim's Convenience. This is another show I didn't really watch, but it's still on, I think, on CBC. Yeah, it has a Korean Canadian family running a convenience store in Toronto, and that was just amazing and all of that. So yeah, it's great to get Asian representation on TV in such a cool way, and the Korean culture of running convenience stores and all that. It was kind of cool and all that. It still is. I should be watching that, but I'm not. I don't know why. Number 6 is one of 2 Canadian comedy shows on this list that are not CBC centric. It's Corner Gas. You're thinking Corner Gas wasn't on CBC? Nope. Corner Gas was the brainchild of CTV. That's right, the second network in Canada. You have CBC, you have CTV, and you have Global, but yeah, CTV. So this was a CTV show, Corner Gas. Set in Dog River, Saskatchewan. Told you this wouldn't be the last time I mentioned Saskatchewan on this list. Corner Gas really was great. Brett Butt, Fred Ehrlich, Nancy Robertson, Tara Spencer Nairn, who would later play Mrs. Baker on Degrassi, season 14. Lauren Cardinal as Davis, Brent Butt as Brent, Fred Underwick as Hank, the perpetually unemployed guy who causes things. Brent, the owner of the gas station. Nancy Robertson as Wanda, who was this Brent's assistant, but is very smart and has degrees, and then she just doesn't get paid much. Lauren Cardinal as Davis, the police chief, if well, and then Tara Spencer Nairn as Karen, the assistant. You had Eric Peterson from Street Legal as Oscar, the cranky father of Brent, and the late Janet uh, Wright as Emma, Brent's mother. And let's not forget about Lacey, aka Gabrielle Miller, the owner of the Ruby Cafe across from Corner Gas, and also the butt of Oscar and Emma's perceptions because Lacey always thinks that she just can't fit into Dug River and all that. But yeah, it was kind of fun. It had a massive cult following and all that for many years. I think you can go to rural Saskatchewan to see the set. But yeah, it was pretty impressive and all that. Rough Riders, and then you had lots of stories about Brent perpetually not growing up and not having a relationship. Although they did a Corner Gas movie in which Brent and Lacey hooked up, so that was nice. Number 7 is the other one on this list, as a cat is stupidly trying to interrupt my train of thought, and that is Trailer Park Boys. Troublemaker. Troublemaker. I'll put you on the other side of the couch. There you go. Sorry about that. Live TV, and I'm definitely not going to be able to repeat this stuff because I would have lost my train of thought. Never mind. Trailer Park Boys. This was on Showcase, another Canadian specialty channel. And Trailer Park Boys was a mockumentary in which there would be residents in a Nova Scotia trailer park. So cool. They gave Atlantic Canada some representation here. So that's what they did in Nova Scotia. So it's crude humor, memorable characters. You had Ricky, the leader of the group, that always seemed to be masterminding schemes to get rich quick schemes. You had Julian, the level-headed middle person of the trio, who was okay, and you had Bubbles, the lovable guy that kind of looked like he had fog glasses, and a lot of people thought he was, mentally deficient, but I don't think so. Bubbles was a decent character. And then you had Mr. Leahy and Randy, the trailer park people who are always trying to ruin Julian, Ricky, and Bubbles and their plots. You had J Rock, aka Jonathan Torrance, him in Canada, CBC, Journal Vision, and CTV for Degrassi Next Gen with that memorable cameo in season 3. It was fun. It actually included, like, what is it, Sebastian Bach and some other celebrities and all that in their stuff. Even trying to use model trains to ship drugs across the border. It was actually quite impressive and all that. Comedy number 8 is The Kids in the Hall. So the Kids in the Hall were these five or four, these 5 Canadian guys. It was a sketch comedy show. It was basically before Air Force. If I can remember the 5 people's names, well, everyone should know the name. Well, I know Bruce McGregor was on it. Bruce Kevin McCullough, or is it Bruce McCullough? I'm gonna have to look it up online because, like, I don't like to do that. Like the 5 guys. Scott Thompson was one of them. I remember that. Okay, so it was Dave Foley, Bruce McCullough, Kevin McDonald, Mark McKinney, and Scott Thompson. That's it. So yeah, they were doing sketch comedies and all that, trying to do that, and they would all dress in drag and all that. It would be amazing and all that. Like, they would cover taboo subjects, and they did a lot of things. Surreal sketches, iconic characters. I am cutting your head. So yeah, it was a CBC cult for like 6 seasons and all that. So yeah, you got that. And then number 9 is Schitt's Creek, one of the 2 involving Catherine O'Hara. Schitt's Creek was acclaimed. It started on CBC, and then HBO found it and decided to use it. And Schitt's Creek would be both on CBC and HBO for their years. It was a wealthy family forced to live in a small town they actually bought because they ran out of money. It won numerous awards, hearts worldwide. I admit I didn't really watch Schitt's Creek as a person, and I should. But yeah, it was amazing seeing Catherine O'Hara as Moira, the mother of the children, alongside Eugene Levy, who was the father. Good old Dan Levy, Eugene's son, being the son, and the daughter. I can't remember her name, but you know, it was like Angela. I don't remember, but yeah, Kids in the Hall was an amusing thing. But yeah, Schitt's Creek was also good too. It was basically a fish out of water story. They bought this town and they have to live in that town and try to make it interesting and all that. It's kind of cool. It was a decent brand of comedy that you didn't think would happen. And last and finally, at least number 10 is SCTV. What gave Catherine O'Hara her start in the Canadian TV scene? Now, this might have been a CBC show, but it didn't start out on CBC. It actually started at Global, what we call the third Canadian network. It's Global. For a few seasons, it was just this Wednesday night show on Global, SCTV Second City, a comedy troupe, T Dot, or Toronto to most people. But it had like these characters and these actors doing sketches and all that. Sunrise Semester, a great part of the early days, Shtick Fu, which kind of is racist now, but it wasn't back then. You had you had a couple of people. You had Harold Ramis even being there for the first season. The great Harold Ramis before he went to do Ghostbusters and Stripes and other movies. You had um, Yeah, you had a great ensemble. You had John Candy. Everyone remembers John Candy. You had him as Johnny LaRue. You had Joe Flaherty as the station owner. What's his name? Guy Caballero. Yeah, you had the late Joe Flaherty. He's like John Candy. He's dead. You had Eugene Levy as Earl Cannonbear, and of course the eyebrows for Eugene Levy. You had Andrea Martin, who did some great female characters like Perini Scoloso. You had Catherine O'Hara, of course, who was Lola Heatherton. You had Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis, the the Mackenzies. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. Yeah, you had Bob and Doug. Great characters. They even had a cartoon show about them on Global. And then you had Martin Short came in later, Ed Grimley and all that with the cowlick and all that. They had Tony Rosato and Robin Duke come in after a few dismissals, but then CBC picked it up and moved it to Toronto and basically made it a big boom. It was such a big boom that NBC even bought into it and would release SCTV 90, which was 90-minute episodes of SCTV in which they would have new sketches with old sketches spliced in. It didn't work out. NBC, after a few years, failed, and then CBC kind of bailed as SCTV. Their final season in 1984 was actually on a pay channel. Bet you didn't know that. But yeah, it didn't have any rights. Like CBC didn't really have the rights. Global didn't have the rights. City TV didn't have the rights. CTV didn't have the rights. So yeah, it on a massive flop in their final season. But still, I mean, you have these great comedy actors and all that. John Candy, Uncle Buck, Catherine O'Hara, Kevin's mom on Home Alone, Eugene Levy doing like Best in Show and all that. You had Andrea Martin in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. You had Rick Moranis, Honey I Shrunk the Kids. Dave Thomas in a few movies of his own, and Harold Ramis. So ensemble. That was one of the best ensembles in history. It's not Saturday Night Live, but we'll take it. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond, and rest in peace, Catherine O'Hara. Adieu.